Good morning, podcast listeners. This is Ed Franklin with the Ed Franklin No Limits podcast. Thank you for joining me today. Remember, you can always reach me at edfranklin.nolimits@gmail.com or hit me up on social media if you have a topic you'd like to hear about, or you have maybe a guest or you'd like to be a guest on my podcast. I think if it aligns with what I do, I'd be happy to have a guest if you want to promote something, maybe promote a book or maybe something in self improvement, whatever. I mean, it's no limits. We can do whatever we want here. So, again, thank you for joining us. And I had intended on doing a podcast on Valentine's Day, and then another one, or in addition to, or instead of, I was going to do it on the 21st because it was Kit and I's wedding anniversary. And I did a nice post on, we don't really celebrate Valentine's Day, but I did a nice post on Facebook and LinkedIn because really I was sincere in the post and saying that marrying Kit was the best thing I ever did. And I was going to tell you the story about how we met. And I kind of felt like I couldn't do it justice. And I don't know if you even wanted to hear that, but I'm going to tell you the story anyway, maybe the shorter version, because it has to do a lot with relationships and my opinion on how relationships develop and how ours developed. We were very lucky. We were very lucky with some bad luck that turned into something great. And so I tell you, just to get started, I'm going to ramble a little bit today. I didn't really have a plan. I have some things I want to talk about that are relevant in life, I think, and to many of my listeners, because I know who a lot of the listeners are, and you might get something out of it. So why not do another podcast? Now, later in the week or early next week, I'm going to do more of a speech podcast because most of you know I have these ambitions to speak out in public. And I wanted to kind of run that speech by you and see kind of how you feel about it and see if there's really any value to it. So, again, thank you for joining me. Kit and I met 26 years ago in 1999. We were our kids, we were both single parents at the time. I had my three younger daughters and she had her two daughters. Both had gone through a divorce. I was in the middle of going through a divorce. And as you know, I was married previously. So it was my second marriage, and I was not super interested in getting married again. It was just not something I didn't think I was good at it. And I still might not be. I don't know. We get along great, but um, it was just something I wasn't really interested in looking for. I was, you know, let me tell you the story. So we are going to our so I had three daughters at home, and my oldest daughter of those three were getting an award. And we went to, they had an auditorium at Garden Road School. And we went to this award ceremony. And I was walking down the hallway and I saw a friend of mine at the end of the hallway. Well, I'm walking down, and on my left hand side, here is Kit sitting there in kind of business attire, a skirt and, high heels and that. And I looked at her hand for whatever reason, and she wasn't wearing a wedding ring. So I walked a little further, saw my friend, and I said, "Hey, do you know that girl that's sitting right there behind me?" He goes, "Oh yeah, Kit, I know her. Do you want to get introduced?" And I said, "I do." Super pretty, right? And she was just kind of sitting there. I think she was chatting with someone else. And so he introduces us, and we go into the auditorium. And I was going to try to sit next to her, but she told me, no, these seats are saved. So I think her sister was there and some other kids and that. So it was just kind of a funny thing that, here I'm trying to meet her and she tells me that. So after that, I go back. Our kids were in the same class. So I talked to the teacher and said I had some interest in meeting her, maybe taking her out to lunch. And the teacher um, said something to her about it. And as things moved along, we ended up making plans. Although we couldn't go to lunch because she had to work, and the day I wanted to do it, she was working. So we planned on going to dinner, and we went out, or we got ready to go out, and my ex-wife was supposed to take the kids that night, and she called me and said she couldn't take them, and I'm like, well, I got to cancel this date, right? But my friend was over, and he says, you know what? My wife and I will watch the kids go on your date, and so we did. Had an awesome time. I could tell you more details, but and so we really had talked that night about not introducing our kids, to each other because it was so soon and we wanted to wait a while. Well, the date went so well, and our, that weekend we had communicated on some other levels, and we ended up the next week going out to dinner and introducing the kid, and the kids knew each other, right? So my daughter knew her oldest daughter, the ones that got the award, and as our relationship started to flourish, and the kids were, we had it on a schedule where every other weekend we had free time because the kids went to the other parent's house. But as that progressed, the other parents started canceling all the time, and saying I can't take them this weekend and this and that. And we never did that. We always took the kids. We never, I would cancel other plans to have the kids. I was never going to tell the kids I couldn't take them for some reason. And she was the same way. So, gosh, moving forward after a couple months, it was just like, I don't know, maybe it was more than a couple of months, but we just started having the kids all the time because the other parents were just not being reliable. And so she would bring her kids over in the morning, and we would get them ready for school, feed them breakfast. We would take them to school. Then they, after school, they'd go to daycare or come over or whatever. I think, we were doing a lot of different things just trying to keep the kids covered. And we, the smartest thing we did is we communicated a lot. We talked a lot about what the future might look like, with no plans to get married, by the way. Um, we just kind of talked about kids and kind of how we felt. And Kit's really, her dream in life was to be a mother, and she loved that. She had a tough relationship prior to meeting me, and she was probably down on men at some level. And I was definitely not a big fan of my ex-wives, so we didn't know where the whole thing was going to head. So I was married in the Catholic Church in the first time I got married, and the next time I got married, I just got married civilly. So according to Catholicism, and I'm a Catholic, I could not get married back in the Catholic Church without getting an annulment. And when we went and talked to the people at the church, talked to the priest, and that, he says, yeah, well, you're going to have to, if you want to get married in the Catholic Church, you're going to have to get an annulment. So we started the process of getting an annulment. During that process, you learn a lot about yourself and about each other and about past relationships, because there's this huge amount of paperwork you need to fill out. It was the getting the annulment was a lot of work, and I know why people don't go through them, because they're very tough, and you're getting judged at some level. But we stayed on course, and we did all the paperwork. We talked to there was a woman that was helping us with it. We talked to her, and she helped us out, helped us fill out the paperwork and did all these things. Still communicating at a high level. And so now we're thinking, move forward a year or two. Now we're thinking, yeah, this could turn into a marriage. My safety net or my protection was that since I was a Catholic, I was not going to get married unless I get married in the Catholic Church. So if I didn't get the annulment, we would have never got married. But lo and behold, we both got our annulments granted. Kit was not married in the Catholic Church, and she, with me, went to RCIA, and I had never been confirmed in high school. So we both went through RCIA, which is Catechism for Adults. We both got confirmed. We had to, and so we had to jump through a lot of hoops. And so she kids around a lot and says, we dated for 4 years, but there was some reasons behind it. Now, I'm sure you don't think this is very interesting. It was pretty romantic, I thought, the way the whole thing worked out. And we changed a lot during that 4 years on things we were doing relationship wise, things we were doing, morally or whatever, however you want to do it. We really adjusted ourselves to that, to follow the Catholic life. And it was wonderful. It was just, it was the best thing that ever happened to both of us, because here we are married 22 years now. And honestly, it's been beautiful. I mean, we just don't have issues together, right? We pretty much believe in everything the same. We're not big political people. You guys know that. I don't like talking about politics. I will talk about religion, not to you, but I would talk about it to her and anybody else who, wants to talk about it on a civil level. Obviously, the Catholic Church doesn't have the best reputation for some of the practices that have happened over the years, but that's not what the religion's about. And I'm not going to get religious on you now. I guess my point being is we really did a lot of communicating. I've mentioned in the past that when I have taken over jobs, I would talk to salespeople or managers or whoever and say, look, there's really three things we need to concentrate on right out of the gates. One of them is expectations, right? You have to understand each other's expectations as in any relationship. It doesn't even at the grocery store, you have an expectation of what somebody's going to do that's, ringing you up for your groceries. Then you have to communicate those expectations, right? You have to make sure you understand what each of you want and it's very clear. And expectations change, by the way, over years. So you got to make sure you're continuing to communicate those things. And then discipline, right? Then you have to have the discipline to do what you said you were going to do, or that person says what they're going to do. So my point being, besides the fact that we have, I think, the best marriage I've ever met anybody, and my mom and her husband, my stepdad, had an amazing relationship, and I learned a lot from them too, watching them. And unfortunately, my kid never got to meet my mom. My mom passed away in 1997, and we didn't meet until 1999. But we communicated a lot. That was the beauty of our relationship, right? We spent a lot of time together. We talked to each other about a lot of different things. She knows a lot about me that I might not have let anybody else know. I understand her at a high level, and she understands me at a high level. I don't know how she does that because I'm a little bit of a whack job when it comes to how my mind works and things and how I get on these tangents. You guys can probably tell from my past podcasts that I do sometimes get off on tangents and things, and my mind is always just racing, and we don't do everything together. By the way, I do man stuff sometimes, she does woman stuff sometimes, and that's okay. That's part of those expectations. We like very different movies. We like a lot of common movies and things like that, but we also like very different. There's some movies she watches I just can't stand, and vice versa. Some things. The things we read, I read very different books than she reads. So we have a lot of differences, and then we have a lot of similarities. The key to that relationship is not allowing, because you don't allow people to do things, but is respecting what she likes and she respects what I like. And it doesn't matter if she likes it or not. It's not anything immoral. It's not anything wrong. It's just a different things. And that's okay. There's, we're not opposites by any matter, by means. They say opposites attract. We're not opposites by any way. But we do think a lot differently about certain things, personal things. Super important no matter what relationship we're in, whether it's a work relationship, whether it's a manager employee relationship. It's just communicating. It's been awesome. And we spent so much time with the kids. I mean, it was just our life, right? Every weekend, every night, we'd sit down for dinner. And we still do it today with the grandkids. We probably sit down for dinner 99% of the time together, eat the same thing, talk at dinner, have fun after dinner, whatever. So we do a lot of that. And as the kids were growing up and leaving, it was kind of tougher. Now, we're not empty nesters like a lot of my friends, because I still have the two grandkids here. But we did everything together. When COVID hit, we were going to be in the same space 24 hours a day. Now, just like I'm sitting here, I'm upstairs in a studio that I developed, and she's downstairs in her office because she still works from home. And that's fine with us. We don't have any issue with that. I don't get tired of her. We talk. I don't talk to her all day because I'm working, but I'll go down and, we'll chat for a minute. Sometimes we have lunch together. Sometimes we don't. So it's just, I guess, the reason we're having a successful marriage is we respect each other's time, each other's space, each other's likes, dislikes, things like that. I don't make anything for dinner, and she doesn't make anything that I don't want or care for. We collaborate on that. And it's kind of businessy at some level, but then it's also very respectful. And I just love, it was just the best decision I ever made in my life. some of the bad luck I talked about was probably dealing with children at some level together. Since we had children already when we met, we kind of decided that we needed to take care of our own. If there was a problem, I would take care of my kids. If her kids were the problem, she would take care of them. I think naturally it's better if you're married before you have children, and then just work on your relationship. And usually your relationship with your kids is fine. But we could not do that because we had exes to deal with. We had a lot of external things to deal with going on. But I can tell you this: she's never, in my opinion, ever treated my kids like they weren't hers, and it's the same way with me. When I tell you I have 7 daughters, I have 5 daughters and 2 stepdaughters, but I never refer to them as stepdaughters because they were with us for so long. When we met, our 2 youngest were young. I mean, they were under 5 years old, maybe 3 or 4. I don't even remember now. I have to do the math, but which I'm not going to do. So I've been around them as much or more than their father, and my kids have been around Kit as much or more than their mothers. So, like I said, my point to that is just in life, we have to have these. You have to have the ability to build that relationship, no matter what the relationship is. It could be romantic, it could be, business, friendships, whatever. Um, we think so much alike sometimes that I can almost tell you what she's going to say and vice versa, and that's fine with me. I don't think I'm 100% confident we'll always be together until one of us goes somewhere else. You know what I mean? But I just tell you that I love her so much, and 22 years, it's 26 together, and 22 years married. It was the best thing I ever did in my life. Best relationship. She's the only woman in the world that I put on the level of my mother. And she backs me up no matter what I decide to do, whether work, business, whatever. She always backs me up. She's always behind me. She always believes in me. And I can tell you, you need someone in your life like that can back you up and listen. And to have someone in your corner like that is amazing. And I don't need 10 people in my corner. I just need Kit in my corner. Because I know if I'm never going to make a decision that's in the best in the worst interest of our family. I can remember a guy telling me I had a chopper for a while, a motorcycle, and Kit didn't care. She used to ride on it. It was a hardtail, and for you don't understand, there's no shocks on this bike, so when you hit a bump, it could shake your teeth loose. And she would take a Vicodin or something and get on that bike and ride with me for an hour, which is hard because the back seat takes all the hits. Later on, I got a really nice road glide. You guys have seen pictures of that probably, and you knew that I rode a motorcycle. And somebody said to me one time, "Oh, is your wife letting you get a motorcycle?" I said, "Dude, I don't have that kind of relationship. I don't have to ask my wife to do something." And vice versa, I don't tell her I'm doing it either. We discuss it, right? It wasn't all she said when I wanted to get that bike was get me a backrest that's comfortable, and I did. And she rode on the bike all the time. We have since gotten rid of the bike because it wasn't because I wasn't coordinated enough to ride it. It's that I don't trust traffic, especially in the area we live in now. The drivers are terrible over here. So we just don't ever have that relationship where she has to ask me to do something. I have to ask her to do that. Something. I traveled a lot in some of the jobs I had, and she was always, right there behind me, took care of the kids, my kids, her kids. And we just never had that kind of relationship. We don't have a 50s relationship. We have a very, communicate. But I'll tell you the funniest thing. When you get married in the Catholic Church, they make you go through these classes, and they're called pre-Cana classes or premarital classes or whatever. And in order to do these in the timing that we wanted to get married, we had to go to Orange County for these. And you have to do these before they'll kind of bless off on your marriage. And the people that were running it were very nice people. We would run up to Orange County about 1 o'clock on a Sunday, have the class, and haul ass back home and make the kids dinner, right? And the kids were old enough at that time where they could kind of take care of themselves. We had older kids there too. And these people were whacked out of their mind when they came to recommend. We could have taught this class much better after the experiences that I had in failed marriages and the relationship Kit and I had at that point. We could have done a much better job with these classes, but they were very when they would explain how to communicate with each other, it was very patronizing. And I won't even do it because it just irritates me even to think about how they were telling us to do things. So we just were there to fulfill our obligation to the Catholic Church so we could get married. But look, we got married on a Friday night. It was a beautiful night. It was an awesome wedding. We did not have a reception. We had a very small thing afterwards. And then, like a year later, we had a reception where I didn't want to, we knew what the expense of having kids was. And we ended up just going to Poway Lake, kind of catering the food. And I didn't want people to have to go out and buy clothes and get all fancy and dressed up for this because we've been together a long time. At that point, it was already 5 years. And we didn't want to burden anybody with that. So we told the people, listen, wear shorts. I don't care. Just wear whatever you have. Come up, celebrate this thing. We just bought drinks, put them in coolers and things like this. Kind of a redneck reception. And we didn't have the money to do a big reception anyway. We have 8 kids. So, but we had a great time and it was a great experience. And like I said, if you can, get anything out of that, get out the fact that we did a phenomenal job. It's one of the best things I've ever done at building a super solid relationship. And it's been that way the whole time. Have we had issues? Well, yeah, we have. I couldn't count them on one hand, the issues we've had. I can guarantee you that if we had issues, it was my fault. It wasn't hers. She's like my mom. She's like an angel. So is she perfect? She is for me. That's all I care about. If you know Kit, she's got an edge to her. I don't see the edge. One of the things I always said, I never want to be yelled at. I'm not going to get yelled at. I was doing a presentation for a company that I was taking control as a sales manager or the VP of sales. And I had like 9 or maybe 12 salespeople. And one of my slides in my presentation was, I don't argue. I just won't argue with you. If you want to, I argued with my ex-wives way too much. I don't argue. I don't argue with Kit. She doesn't argue with me. I don't argue with anybody. If it starts to get to that level, I just back out. So I just know I'm not going to get yelled at. I'm not going to get that. I'm not going to ask permission to do things in life. I know what I'm supposed to do and what I'm not supposed to do. Sometimes I do what I'm not supposed to do, by the way, because I'm human and that's what happens. But yeah, I can guarantee you that any issues we've ever had in our marriage, that it was my fault. And I don't say that because she makes me say that. I know that's kind of funny. We don't have any issues. So it's a beautiful story. And if I thought you were interested, I would tell you more details about it. But I think you got the gist that I think we have a perfect marriage and that's okay because that's my opinion. And if you don't think that, then that's your opinion and you're not here every day. But I know we laugh a lot. We cry sometimes. That's just part of life. But I can tell you that we do it together. So that's what's the most important thing about that whole thing. And I could probably end this podcast right now. I'm not, but I probably could end this podcast right now with just what I've told you about that. So I hope that my kids glean some knowledge from our relationship. And I know all of our kids are in good relationships and they've had some ones that weren't great. I was really lucky when I was younger. I had good relationships. I'm still in contact with some of those girls that I had a relationship with, women now. And I don't know. I had good relationships when I was growing up, and they might have just gotten stale, or we grew out away from each other or whatever. But mostly, I had really good relationships, and like I said, I still communicate with those girls to this point. So I was thinking about social media and what I just told you about our wedding and our marriage and our relationship is like a Facebook story, right? Everybody's happy on Facebook. We are that happy, by the way, but I don't use Facebook to post negative things. To me, there's no value in it. But social media has turned, I love social media for a lot of reasons. I like it for business. I like it for the fact that I can post pictures of grandkids and, celebratory things about my wife and I. And I've rarely pictured food, but I've taken a picture of food that we'd made that was kind of cool. And I try to put something positive on Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok, all those places. I put things positive. And my algorithms, because of that, come up with positive things, right? I listen to motivational speakers. I listen to, um, like exercise videos, things like that. That's what my algorithms bring up. But social media has gotten to the point, these people are getting so tricky with social media that they can fool you into believing that posting things that aren't true. I'll tell you how I know that. Well, I know that because it's obvious. The second reason is we had something happen 5 years ago in and around our family, and it got a lot of press. Not and we weren't mentioned in the press, but these people were mentioned in the press a lot. And maybe a week ago, I was online, and I was just kind of going through that past uh, time, and something popped up and it said 5 facts about this thing that happened. And I read the 5 facts, and only like 2 of them were kind of maybe true. 3 of them were absolutely not true. And here's this seemingly reputable company that was like a news company posting facts that were absolutely not true, because I know I was there. I know what happened. I know all the players, and I know everything about that situation. And it was a lie. Now, with that being said, all the last 2 weeks, I've gone to 2 like seminars about public speaking, knowing that I wasn't going to pay for anything, but wanted to see if I could gain any knowledge, any things like that. I like doing that. I like learning things. And it was one of these things, by the time they're done talking, they're trying to sell you a program, right? Trying to sell you time, trying to sell you. There was one speaker that says, I'm going to, I charge this much an hour to sit down on a one-on-one. And it was crazy. It was like $7,000 for an hour. And then he did the whole, but I'll tell you what, if you sign up right away, I'll give you a $7,000 value. I'll sit down with you one-on-one. Is it worth it? I don't know. I wouldn't sit down with the guy for $7, by the way. But it was a lot of this AI generated information, right? Even though the guy was speaking to us live, I could see him, I could touch him. One of them was online, one of them was in live. And but you can hear the what do you call it? Like the pitch. You can hear the sales pitch, and you can watch it going down. Then he has books, and he has all these other things. He had his book set up, and he wants to sell you a book, and he wants to sell you this speaking program. If you join the speaking program, and he teaches you how to speak and teaches you hand gestures and the way you look at the audience and do all these things, you're going to make this much money, and he guarantees it, which he can't guarantee it, by the way. But and this was in both seminars. You could hear the pitch coming. There was a guy named Don Lupree in the 90s, and older people might remember this guy. And I worked nights, so a lot of times if I was off, I would be up late because my body clock would tell me, I worked from like 10 to 6 in the morning. So if I was off one night, I'd be up at midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning watching TV. And this guy used to come on and tell you that if you ran an ad in a newspaper, and then you multiplied that ad through all these newspapers, that you would get X amount of dollars. And he was selling like an ebook, which you call an ebook now, but back then it was actually a printed book you would mail to them, and they would pay shipping and all this bullshit. And this guy got caught scamming people, and it was him and a bunch of other of these types of business guys. And I can tell you, this guy screwed so many people out of money, kind of like a Madoff thing. Not as much money, but Bernie Madoff. If you don't know who that is, look it up. It's an interesting story. And he got arrested, and I think even before he went to trial, he was in jail, and he cut his throat open and committed suicide. The guilt caught up with him. What he was doing to people, taking their money, and he might have had a ton of money from all the people that he ripped off. But we're seeing something very similar going on right now with AI on social media, in my opinion. This is only my opinion. If you don't believe it, I don't care. I really don't care. I see it going on because what's going on is, and I use AI quite a bit. I use it to help me write. Sometimes I use it for different things. And if you don't know what artificial intelligence, I just bought a book and I read, and I'm not an expert because I read this book, but all AI really is a big collection of information and then they spit it out. So if you ask a question, instead of when we were kids asking 100 people to give their opinion, they're getting opinion from 100 million people or a billion people, whatever. So, and then because of computers, they can spit the information out quick. So I will use it for things like that. So what you're seeing on social media now, because of my algorithms and the speaking stuff, is I'm getting these constant ads for they want to teach me how to speak. But as you read through the ads, you can see the very similar language, all these similar algorithm type, words, and it's the same stuff. So now we've created a platform for every 20 to 30-year-old, and no offense to 20 or 30-year-olds, that are now experts, and they're very matter of fact experts on how to speak, how to, sell, how to get leads, how to do all these things. And I'll tell you, after 40 years of being in the workforce, it's all bullshit. It's all horseshit. I'm just telling you. And these ads are so similar, and it could be the same person putting the same ads out with with a different company name. I don't know. But kind of back to social media. So you're getting all this information from people about how great they're doing in life and how their life is so perfect. And then conversely, you have these people that really post negative stuff. They're calling out exes, they're calling out employers, are doing all these things. Super unclassy, by the way, because if you're looking for a job and they go on your social media and they find these things, guess what you're not getting? That's a job. Now, as I was looking for work last year, and I'm always looking, just one of those people, I see that it's also social media is hurting me too, because I have pictures of myself all over the place. If you put my name in the internet, it pulls up pictures of me with the chamber, it pulls up, and you can tell that I'm not 25 years old. So at my age, it's hurting me too. And then I have my podcast advertised, I have speaking advertised, I have all these other things advertised. I remember I had this description on LinkedIn, and this headhunter contacts me. I knew the guy. And he says, I just went and looked at your LinkedIn profile, and you've done too much in your life. I said, well, that makes no fucking sense. He says, no, understand that if someone's looking for a salesperson, you have operations experience too. They don't want the operations experience. They just want the sales experience. So it makes it look like you've done all these different jobs, which I have. And I was good at all of them. Was I an expert? I've never been an expert in anything in my life. I'll never will be an expert. And I got news for you. Most experts aren't experts either. They'll tell you they are. There was this one guy that comes on about speaking, and he talks about body language, right? How statistically people do this and do that and do that and do this when they talk. And when you do this, it turns people off. When you look a certain way, it turns people off. And he's probably 25 years old. And he uses words like you must. If you don't do it this way, you must do it this way, or it's not going to work. Anytime someone says that, it's bullshit, right? What I think I want to see in a speaker is I want to see a genuine person getting up and talking. I want to hear a true story. I don't want to hear fabricated stuff. I don't want to hear a guy add to the story because he thinks it's more important. I want to hear the story. That's what's the most important. That story I told about my wife and I meeting and all that, if I really delved into that, that story could go on for an hour. And it'd be interesting. I really think it'd be interesting. It'd be romantic. It'd be, we worked hard. We did a lot of things to get to where we're at today, to have this relationship we have today where we can not be mad at each other, where we can communicate on a good level. She knows what I'm doing. I know what she's doing. All these things, it would have been a great story. Now, I don't want to do that today, but that's what I want to hear when I'm hear someone speaking. Most guys, women that are out there speaking professionally, yes, they do have some of them have been trained a certain way. I know Toastmasters trains people a certain way. And I mean, that's fine if that's what they want to do. I do not want to do that. I remember I was listening to this guy talk one time. It's a small mixer we had. And somebody had asked him about his childhood or something. Like he was telling the history of himself. And when he got to talking about his parents and his grandmother, he pushed his hands in his pockets and he was kind of pressing on his legs. And you could kind of see he was really getting kind of wound up. And his voice started shaking a little bit. He started getting very emotional. And I stopped him because it was a very intimate meeting and we were allowed to do that. And said, you know, I don't even know if you're realizing, I almost said his name. I don't want to say his name. You're not realizing you're doing this, but we're seeing you get very, not nervous, but you're getting very wound up, I guess, the word I used. Your body language really changed in that way. Now, do I think body language is important? Of course. You know, I used to go into mixers and people would say, man, Ed, you look like you're going to kill somebody. But it was just that I wasn't smiling. And I was maybe concentrating on my phone or something. And I'm big. You guys know I'm big. And I got a lot of tattoos and things. And I guess I could look intimidating if if that's what my intention was. So I have to be conscious of that, right? When I go into a room to smile a lot and say, hey, how you doing? Everything's going good. Tell a joke, maybe. And it does get people to, relax a little bit more. So at that level, I understand. But my point to this AI thing is it's just spitting out the same information. And they're plugging in. I did something this morning with AI and just to help me write an email. And it would say, blah, 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 insert your name here, right? That makes sense. That's nothing different than what we've had used in the past. I'm just getting it quicker and it's fine. And it looks fine. And I change the AI. Sometimes I don't like the language and I'll change it a little bit. So in a lot of aspects, it's really good. Now, it can also be really bad. In reading this book, there's a lot of security concerns about this. There's a lot of security concerns about um, facial recognition when you're out. Facial recognition when you're out in public. There's a lot of scams coming from it. I'm in the senior business now, and a lot of seniors get scammed on a regular basis because of AI and phone calls and automatic emails and things like that. I get these scams daily and on my in my email. I get try to get these scams on my phone daily. I get them, maybe 5 or 6 a day. And I try to block the numbers and I try to do all those things. And sometimes I have to go online. Apple's a good one where, oh no, Facebook. So on my Facebook business page, it will come up that Meta is going to shut me down because I'm breaking the Meta rules. I looked it up online. It's a scam. They want you to click something to go to, and get into their thing. My son does cybersecurity. He can tell you all kinds of nightmares about cybersecurity and what's going on with that. Um, so the AI, first of all, it's been around for about 100 years, maybe 60 years. They just haven't had an opportunity to um, condense the information and speed the information up. So what you're getting is not anything new. You're just getting it quicker, and everybody's getting it now, right? We never had computers in the 80s. Now everybody's got a computer in their hand or in their pocket. So it's out there. But it was funny as I was listening to these speakers tell me on how to speak, and some of the people were getting up and speaking at these things, and they were very nervous, right? They were very uptight. I'm sure they had really good topics to speak about. Everybody has a good story, I can guarantee you. But it's not always easy to tell a story, right? To be able to articulate things that happen in a story and that are relevant to the story. Somebody told me the other day, said, Ed, you're a really good storyteller. You tell jokes all the time. You're good at telling a story. The problem with a lot of the stories in my life is they would embarrass a lot of people and they would humiliate some other people. And they could even implicate me, but I don't care. I'm open book. I would tell you if you ask me a question. It's these other people that, and some of them are my kids that I would have to expose, and I just won't do that. So that's not something you're going to get out of me. You're not going to get a book about my life out of me. You're not going to get any of that because it could hurt a lot of people's feelings, and I have no interest in that. I want to give somebody something. I want to give them value. I want to make them understand how valuable they are. So it's not it's not in my best interest to do that. We do have something called NI, and if you don't know what that is, it's called natural intelligence. That's the intelligence we were born with. That's that gut feeling. Those are those things that we can do. And we need to use that more often. We tend to forget that we have that. We're using AI to do things for us when we have the ability to do it already. The only thing I told you I use AI for is I have a question sometimes and I will ask it on AI and I get the immediate answer. Now, is the answer right? You got to go to other sources to make sure that's right. If it doesn't sound like it makes sense, it probably doesn't make sense. But there is some good information out there, and you shouldn't be scared of AI, but you should be careful, like anything else. But I just see these kids, not always kids, it's adults. I mean, of course they're adults already, they're kids, but my age people using AI in the wrong way, I believe, and you're just getting bombarded with all this stuff. The thing that all these salespeople do that really pisses me off is they're telling you that you're not doing something right. If you have a dream, if you have a goal, if you have, those things, just you got to believe in yourself. You've got to do the research, find out what's best for you. There was a guy the other day that says, don't ever do cardio after you lift weights. Why? I mean, he may explain some physiological reason why you can't do that or why you shouldn't do it. But let me tell you something. If you got enough energy to go lift weights and then do some exercise, some cardio, do it. You're not at a bodybuilder's level where you have to count every macro that goes into your body or every calorie. If you are just getting exercise, that's good enough for now. And a guy will tell you got to read this book or that book or this. Read something, right? And find the one listen. I've read books before that I don't like. My daughter Samantha gave me a book. I read the whole book. I'm like, well, this is bullshit. This is a waste of whatever time I spent on this book. She liked it. I just didn't care for it. It was stuff that I had already regurgitated 15 times because of my age, and said, well, it wasn't. I mean, it was a good book. It just wasn't relevant to what I needed at the time. So stop letting people tell you who you are. When these speakers come to me that are half my age telling me that I don't speak correctly or that my body language is wrong, I don't give a fuck what they say, right? I'm Ed. You get what you get, right? And that's what I think people are interested in. When I started this podcast, I have been a lot less, say, colorful than I think people expected me to be, right? I don't want to piss anybody off. I can't stand up where I'm at right now because the way I set my green screen up and stuff. So I think sometimes when I sit down, my excitement level or my energy level comes down a little bit. But I think people thought I was just going to go off the rails and just say stuff that, I don't care what I say. I can say anything I want. First of all, that's not what this podcast is about. This podcast is about helping you. It's about helping me. It's about furthering my career. It's about helping you understand how important and valuable you are and that you're worthy and that you're all those things. And these AI people come on and go, nope, no, you got to do it this way. If you don't do it this way, you're not going to be successful. This is how I did it. This is how he did it. This is how, great, right? Find your own way. If I asked your opinion, 100 people's opinion on a certain question, I'm going to get 100 different answers, exactly the way it should be. I don't want 95 of the same answer, right? That's why I'm asking you. I hang out with two guys kind of on a semi-regular basis that I hope listen to this podcast. And we have very different political beliefs. We grew up very differently. They probably grew up in a little more better economic situation than I did. Well, when you do that, you grow up with different beliefs. Maybe your parents were, your parents acted different than my parents acted. Listen, I told you some stories about my dad. It's a fucking badass, man. Guy was a hard ass. Did he have problems? Oh yeah, he had problems. All right. I wasn't the problem, but he had problems. And when you grow up in an environment like that, you learn different shit, right? You learn how to fight. You learn how to be tough. You learn how to not take crap off of people. Just the fact that the size I am compared to other people gives me a different attitude about things. And that can be good or bad, probably bad at most levels. But you just everybody's got these different personalities. This is what AI cannot replace. It cannot replace personality. It cannot replace a salesman walking into a room, seeing a customer, seeing his facial expressions, knowing what he does for a living, looking around his office, seeing what he's interested in or she, and sitting down and having a conversation and watching their emotional status and watching all these things. That's what AI cannot replace. It can try to sell you stuff all day, but this consumers, you guys are way smarter than they were, 40, 50 years ago. We have a lot more information about products and services than other people had. But I can tell you, when I go into an office of somebody and I'm sitting down and making a sales call, I'm looking around, I'm listening, first of all, as much as I can listen. You got about 30 seconds to kind of figure out who this person is. This is why I always say science or salespeople are like psychologists. You have a very short time to get a lot of information, and a lot of it's visual information where AI cannot replace. Okay? The way you walk in, the way you're dressed, the colors you're wearing, things like that, those are factor in too, right? I am at the point in my life where when I go to get a sale, I don't care if I get it or not. And when you have that attitude, you end up getting more sales because there's no pressure. I'm not pressuring the person. I don't want to sell somebody something they don't need or want or can afford, right? I want to give them something that's going to help them solve a problem. There's only two reasons people buy things. It's either pleasure or pain. They're either buying something that makes them feel better, could be shoes, pants, shirt, donuts, fucking cake, I don't know, whatever. You're buying that for pleasure, alcohol, pleasure, whatever. Or you're trying to erase some pain. Alcohol bounces back into that. I've had a bad day, I'm going to have a drink. You're tired of mowing your lawn every Saturday, you hire someone to take that pain away. It's the only reasons you buy things, pain and pleasure, either to get rid of pain or add pleasure to your life. Okay. And a lot of times when I was selling different products and services, it was to replace a pain in a business, right? So maybe they had a person that was doing 3 jobs and I was going to be able to replace one of those jobs, right? Take away the pain, make them happier, make them make more money, make them whatever it was for. You've got to kind of start thinking to your life like that. What are you doing during the day? What are you eating? What are you doing for exercise? Exercise is painful when you start, but the pleasure you're going to get from it is going to be amazing, right? Amazing. What you're eating, are you eating for pleasure? Are you eating to get rid of pain? Or are you just eating just to be gluttonous or whatever it is? Now I'm talking like everybody on here is horrible at this. That's not my point at all. My point is that you have opportunities to use your natural intelligence and forget about AI for 5 minutes. AI is a tool. It doesn't replace anything. It's a tool. So anyway, this is on my screen. Oh, sorry. Anyway, there was something on my screen. I had to see what it was. So my next podcast, like I said, is kind of about my speaking. I really I need a favor from all of you. So I need guests on my podcast. It's fine for me to get up here and sit and kind of make up bullshit content. I knew I was going to be all over the board today, and that's okay. And I'll do more of these where I'm all over the board. But I wanted to. This thing's still on my screen. I'm sorry. The next podcast, I'm kind of just do something, but I back to that. Sorry, I'm getting mixed up. I need guests. It's okay that I come on here by myself and do that. Most podcasts don't do that. Most podcasts either tell a story about things or they get a guest on and it kind of takes you into a different area when you're talking to a guest because they'll bring up things that maybe, I don't bring up on a regular basis. So if you know anybody that wants to be a guest or you'd like to be a guest on my podcast, let's have a conversation about it. You don't have to commit to anything. Let's kind of sit down and talk and see if it's something that's going to help benefit other people. The other thing I need is I want to get some opportunities to speak. Now that could be with Chamber of Commerce's, that could be with a nonprofit group, that could be with a senior group. And I have an array of topics I can talk about. Just like I said about the LinkedIn profile, I can talk about just about anything. Remember one time somebody posted on Facebook and said, give me a topic you can talk about for 15 minutes. I said, 15 minutes? Shit, I can talk about anything for 15 minutes. I can talk about grass for 15 minutes. I could talk about a plant for 15 minutes. An hour gets hours long, but I'm almost on this podcast for an hour already. And thank God I'm going to break it up into pieces so you guys don't have to sit through this whole painful thing at one time. So I'm looking for guests. I'm looking for topics. I'm looking for opportunities to speak in front of a group. And like I said, I can alter any of my speaking to a specific topic if you want. I can talk about sales management, leadership, a lot of different things. And this is one of the things the speaker said not to do is you got to have one topic. Well, bullshit. I'm too old for one topic. I'm telling you, I could talk about a pair of pants for half an hour if I needed to, or the underwear I'm wearing. I mean, I could talk about a lot of different things. So listen, I appreciate all of you for listening to my podcast. We need to grow this thing. The last one kind of 2 podcasts ago kind of blew up, and I'm kind of not sure why, and I'm trying to figure that out. I think it could be the way I'm titling them. I could be the way I'm sending them out. There could be a lot of reasons, and I'm trying to figure that out. And I'm using AI, by the way, to help me figure out how to get more popular about that. So there's a lot of great things about AI. There's a lot of great things about social media, but always be careful. You guys are older. You're not kids. When somebody said, I remember somebody said something the other day. I said, if it sounds too good, it's too good to be true. But we just know from growing up that that's the way it is. You just don't, nothing's easy in life. Nothing just comes to you. You got to work for it. So that's what I'm trying to do by doing these podcasts. I appreciate all of you. You're going to see more of me, which is good and bad, but I just want to help you guys out. So edfranklin.nolimits@gmail.com if you want to get a hold of me, or you can hit me up on social media. Stay tuned for the next podcast. It'll be coming in either probably later this week or the beginning of next week, probably later this week. And thank you for listening. And I am out.